during the class, I'll probably let you know what slides we're on just to make sure that you're all on the same page. But right now, today we're going to be learning about formulations, and some of the things that we'll be touching on in formulations include your levels, your tones, how to formulate colors, different types of formulas that you can make, as well as introduction to a new product today. And you guys are really lucky that we have this product now available. So if you're on the call, if you'd like to email me afterwards, I'll send you free samples of the product so that you can try it. And then we'll go through some sample formulations, and at the end we have, of course, our homework and test part of the program. Now, remember that what we talk about today is going to be added to the knowledge you already have and the knowledge you've already gained from the different mods of the classes that you've taken. Awesome, Gary, thanks for joining us. So today, let's start with the levels. Okay, we want to remember that we are like every other color company. We have our natural levels that go from 1 to 11. What makes us a little bit different is that our color is going to be reflective like natural hair color. So it's not going to be matte or translucent. It's going to be more like natural hair, and it'll give you that same kind of shine. Okay. Now, there's a lot going on here, and let's start by looking at this. As a level rises, so does the alkalinity of that level. And what that means is that as you go higher in a level, you're going to get more alkaline. Okay. But at the same time, as the level also goes up, the amount of pigment decreases. So, and this totally makes sense, right? Like dark brown colors, you need more pigment in that formula in order to make the color cover. And lighter blondes, you need less pigment because you're really trying to get more of a lift. Okay. Now let's look at this in detail and what this really means for real shades. Okay. This is the color breakdown for our 1.07. It's the darkest shade that we have. As you can see up there on the graph, you've got close to 76% in water and conditioners that are in that bottle of color. Okay, and then you have an alkaline level of about 5.5, and then pigment that makes up a little over 3% of the shade. Okay. And this will all make sense in a second, but try and keep that in mind. When you look at your red shade, you know, a shade that's in the middle, right now we took a 6.46, you're going to notice that we still have the same amount of water and conditioners. It's about 76%, okay? And then now you'll see the alkaline has gone up to about 7.8, and the pigment has gone down to about 1.6, okay? And then as you move up to our lightest shade, okay, you'll still notice that 76% is water and conditioners. Now the alkaline level has gone up to 10, and the pigment has gone down to 0.061. Now, what all this means is that as you try and lift, or as you go into higher levels, you don't need any, or not as much at all, of the yellow pigments that are up there, because you're really trying to lift. So let's think about that. If lighter shades have less pigment, then they also have less tone. Right? So if I mix a higher level color with a gold tone and a lower level color with a mahogany tone, not only is my target level going to be affected, but the intensity of tone will be more to the mahogany side. Now, think about all the different colors you can create just by what you know and what you've just heard. Now let's take a look at our primary tones. Okay. These are really important. You need these for when you formulate and also for when changing formulations from other brands. Very, very simple. We've got them laid out. We use the universal numbering system, so again, so that anyone can actually learn this system. It's very important to not only learn the numbers, but learn the base tones underneath it. And as you guys have gone through the other classes, you guys have gotten better and better at this, and this should take you to the next level. Again, our point 0 is a cool neutral, so it does have a slight violet or violet blue tone to it, and that's to counteract underlying pigment as you lift. So that's an important thing to remember when you're formulating, because you don't want to formulate two colors together that's going to give you an unwanted result, right? Because everything has to do with the color wheel. Our point 1 is going to be a blue base, that's our ash. Okay. Our point 2 is going to be violet, that's platinum. Our point 3 is gold, which is yellow. Our point 4 is copper, which is orange. Point 5 is mahogany. Point 6 is red. 7 is a deep blue, so it's a darker blue than our ash or our neutral. And then our point 9 is a tobacco, which is a combination of the tertiary colors. Now, when you look at our color book and you look at the shades of the colors, you'll notice that we've already pre-mixed 24 different tonal options for you. Okay, and those are the ones that most likely be used. You could make all of these pre-mixed tones by using neutrals and amplifiers or what have you, but what we've been able to do is make these available for you straight from the bottle. You can also use these pre-mixed tones to mix with themselves or with amplifiers to make whatever tone that you'd like. I just want to take a second to remind you that if you have questions or anything like that, please go ahead and type it into the chat, and we're monitoring that, and we'll be able to answer questions as they come up. Okay. Now, as we look at our color book, we see all the pre-made shades, right? We also see a lot of empty spaces. All those empty spaces are shades that can be created, just the information you already have. Some would be some great looking shades, and others not so much. But for example, one of the questions that we get sometimes is, well, I want to use a level 5.45. We don't make that out of the bottle, so you can't grab a bottle that says 5.45. So how do I make that? And I can make that in a couple of different ways. Okay, and we'll go through some of these later, but just as an example, mixing equal parts of 5.4 and 5.5 is going to give you a 5.45. Or you can decide to make it with amplifiers and use a 5.5 and add 44 to that. And either one of those formulations, using different proportions, are going to give you a slightly different tone on that level 5. So when you get a chance, think about these spots on the board and see how you could create those shades. And that's a good exercise to have right now as you're trying to learn how to make custom colors, is actually take real colors that are out there, create something that's not readily available. Now let's take a look at the power of the amplifier. Now you guys have already learned that the amplifier is oxidative tint, right? So it's going to be exactly the same as your regular tint your hair colors. They're going to process the same. They're going to last the same amount. The only difference is going to be that these amplifiers have no level. So all they have is tone. Now, why that's important is because you need to understand that in order to get the result that you're looking for. If I were to take a model and bleach her blonde and then put one of these amplifiers on top of it, I would not get these deep colors that are on the screen. What I would get is their tone. So it would be almost translucent. So you would still get that purple 22 deep violet tone, but it's not going to be solid purple. So the way that you use these is very, very important. Let's take a look at them really quickly individually, okay? And we'll go through these real fast. You look at the numbers for these amplifiers. They're really trying to tell you what tone they are, okay? So an 07, if we remember previously, is going to be a cool neutral plus blue. Now there's a couple of ways that we can use this. We can use this to enhance darker shades, or we can use it to neutralize lighter shades. And we'll go through formulations for all of these in a second. When you look at the 37 green, it's really telling you that it's yellow and blue, and we know that yellow and blue will make green. You can use this to neutralize your reds and your oranges in your levels 5, 6, and 7s as you're lifting, and you can also use it to put a green tone on something if that's what you're looking for. Our 22 deep violet is a violet-violet, used for enhancing dark shades, very similar to our 07, but it's going to give you more of a purple hue as opposed to a blue. You can also use it in very, very small quantities to neutralize yellows in the lighter shades, and we'll talk about those as well. 44 is a copper-copper, so it's used to enhance or introduce copper into a shade. 64 is a red copper and used to enhance or introduce red copper tones into a shade or into a red copper shade. 66, red, do the same thing for red shades. And 67, which is red-blue, to give us more of a cherry red and introduce that into shades to enhance color. Our 33 intense gold, which is gold, of course you could add it to a shade to add warmth. You could also add it to gray coverage formulas to get more gold, to help with gray coverage. A lot of different uses for it. Now, as we talked about this, you saw the common theme was that you can use amplifiers for vibrancy or for toning. Okay? Let's go through some color formulations for vibrancy. All right. Now, I chose to use a level 1.07 for these sample formulas, but remember that all these are just formulations. So you can modify these by picking whatever shade you would like and then adding these colors to it. Okay? So color formulation for vibrancy on black and dark brown hair. Okay? You may want to add 07 blue or 22 violet to give colors more of a richer look as opposed to a flat matte black look. It gives it a lot more dimension even in the very dark shades. So using one part of 107 and one part of 07 with 10 volume will give you a nice blue-black, and one part of 107 with one part of 22 will give you a nice violet-black. We're using 10 volume in this formula because we're just depositing. You can also do a combination of these colors or what have you, and it's going to give you a much nicer black. Now when it comes to the reds, notice you want to use 64, 66, and 67. The common number that's in there is the 6, and as we learned in our previous classes and today, a 6 is our red, right? Our red tone. So this is going to be great for adding intensity to a red shade. So you're looking at a formula like one part of 7.6 and one part of 66, with a 30 volume and heat, optional of course, would give you a much brighter, more intense red than just using a 7.6 and 20 volume by itself. Now, a couple of things that we're doing here is we're using a higher volume peroxide to get more lift and expose more underlying pigment. And then we're also using a 66 intense red amplifier in with the formula to give it even more of a pop. Now, one of the things that you'll want to do when playing with the reds and the reds with the amplifiers when you're formulating is you're going to want to make sure that you use, well, we recommend that you use a different lower volume peroxide formula on the roots than you do on the midshaft and ends, and that's to compensate for hot roots because we don't want that. And yes, Ginny, Ginny's question is, in this formula, is the 30 volume 2 parts? And yes, that's correct. So you're looking at an ounce of 7.6, an ounce of 66, and an ounce of 30 volume. Again, and 2 ounces of 30 volume. Now again, remember that you always want to keep equal amounts color to developer. So if I'm using 2 ounces total of color, I want to use 2 ounces total of developer. So notice our coppers is very similar. 44 and 64 are copper shades, and it'll give us brighter copper results or deeper copper results, depending on when we want to use them. Now, one of the things about these numbers that you can tell as well, number 44, although it's copper, it's a deeper copper. 64 is a lighter copper. So if you're looking to add copper and depth, the amplifier you want to use is 44. And if you're looking to add copper and vibrancy, the amplifier you'd want to use is a 64. Now, again, this is the same as with the red, right? We want to use our underlying pigment, so we want to expose that to get that power from that underlying pigment and be able to give us more vibrancy, more of that copper tone. So you can do, as in the formula here, 1 part 8.64, 1 part of 64, and then 2 parts of 30 volume. And doing this with heat, again, is going to give you more lift, giving you more underlying pigment, giving you a more vibrant color. Now, for the roots on this one as well, you'd want to drop down. You can do a level 7 and 20 volume, or even the level 8 with the 20 volume. You just don't want to expose that heat or that extra lightness in the new growth area. That was color formulations for adding vibrancy. Now let's look at color formulations for toning. Okay, when you're lifting at different parts of those levels as they lift, they're giving off different underlying pigment. So we have 3 different amplifiers that you can use to add to any of your color formulas to try and control that underlying pigment. You want to remember, this is just like color. So if you choose a, let's say, 4.65, which gives you kind of a mahogany purple look, and then you add more deep violet to it, you're making it more purple, right? So remember that when you're formulating that these tone colors are going to act just the same way as the permanent color. But adding 37 green, 22 violet, or 07 blue, or a combination of them, can help you to counteract anything that while you're doing your lifting. So a typical highlight formulation that you've learned already is on level 6 and below, you can add 37 green amplifier to your lifting formula. The reason why you're doing that is because you're trying to counteract strong red and orange red pigment in those levels below, on 6 and below. So your combination could be any 11 series. We use 11.2 in this slide, but it could be any of the 11 series with 37 amplifier and 60 volume. Okay. Remember again, if it's 2 ounces of total color, you're going to use 2 ounces of the developer. And we'll talk about how much amplifier to use in 1 second. So on level 7 and higher, you're adding 07 blue amplifier to your lifting formula. So it's the same as the previous one, except you're switching out from green to blue. And then we have some stylists that really like control. And so they like to mix their colors, their amplifier colors, to give them more control over the underlying pigment that they are trying to counteract. So for example, they'll mix 07 and 37 to get more of a blue-green color. And they'll mix 22 and 07 in really small amounts to get more of a violet blue to counteract really pale yellow colors. So how much of these amplifiers do I use? Okay, and this is where understanding this takes your formulation, again, on top of what you already know. This takes your formulation a step further. Okay, if you're doing highlights, you're using this first one that's up there. That's 7/8 is the base shade, and 1/8 is the amplifier. Okay. Now what that means is that we're using, let's say, 2 ounces of an 11 series color, and then 2 capfuls, or 1/8 of an ounce, of the 07 or the 37, or a combination of those. And those will allow you to tone while you lift. Now, that's where I would, when I'm doing any kind of highlight, I would say that you should stick to not using more than 2 to 3 capfuls. And when we say capfuls, we mean the top of the cap. Because as we learned earlier, the more of the amplifier we start putting in, we start affecting our level of lift, and we start adding more tone than we actually need. Okay. Now, the other way that we were talking about using amplifiers was adding tone. So when we want to add blue or violet to our darker shades, or reds to our reds, coppers to our coppers, or golds to our blondes, right? We can start out using 3/4 of the formula in the shade that we want, and then 1/4 of the formula in the amplifier that we're using. This is going to give us just a little bit more tone, but still give us a lot of depth. Okay. Now, if we went to half and half, like some of the formulas that we were looking at before, it's going to give us less depth, but a lot more tone. Sometimes that's good for us, especially if we're not trying to cover gray, but we're trying to get a lot of vibrancy in the shade. And let's say we are coloring someone at that same level, right? And we're just trying to get more tone. Then you're looking at modifying your formulas to have more amplifier or equal amounts of amplifier. And then the last part, which you hardly ever use, but stylists do a lot of things. You could have 1/4 of the formula be the base shade and 3/4 of it be the amplifier. And that's when you're really, really looking for mostly tone. I would probably not use that one very often. I think the 2 above it are a lot safer. Okay. So if someone can, in the chat window, let me know if what they see on the screen, it says amplifiers, and we have a 4.6 and a 66 shade on the screen. If someone wants to comment on the chat board, that would make sure that we're all good. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Carol. So best results, you're going to want to use a base tone, as we said, with the desired tone you're trying to get. So, for example, here we're using a 4.6 and a 66. Now, what you want to remember is that the more amplifier you put in, the more tone you're going to get, right? But the less depth is going to be there, okay? You also want to remember that if you're trying to lift, let's say with like an 11 series, the more 07 or 37 or 22 amplifier you put in, the less lift you're going to get. So that's why sometimes when you're lifting and toning, you might be better off using, let's say, a 9.2 and a 60 volume as opposed to an 11.2 and a 60 volume with a whole bunch of amplifier in it. Because that 9.2, as we learned earlier, is already going to have more violet pigment in it to be able to counteract. And again, these are all things that you learn as you start to use the product more and more and start to experiment. Remember, percentages make a difference, right? Here we're looking at a 6.6 and a 66. If we're using dominantly more of the 6.6 and just a little bit of the 66, that's not going to be equal to, and it's not going to give us the same end result as using half and half of each, right? Or even using just a little bit of the base and more of the amplifier. So when you're formulating, and as you keep records for your clients, you can start to change their formulation to get exactly the result that you're looking for. And you guys probably do this already with the other color lines that you have. If Joan comes in this month and you realize that last time it wasn't vibrant enough or it wasn't red enough, this time maybe you bump the intensity of that red by adding a little more amplifier and a little less base. Okay. Now let's break down some colors. If you did the gray coverage seminar, you notice that one of the big parts of that gray coverage seminar was breaking down the colors down to their purest form, getting down to how many reds, how many yellows, and how many blues were in there. And you know, to a lot of people, that's a lot of fun, and to a lot of people, that's a lot of work, and sometimes a little of both. What really we want you to take away from that, though, is really understanding just the proportions, not the exact amounts. I mean, there's a lot of fractions that are involved in that, and trying to figure out exactly, you know, how many reds, how many blues, and how many yellows make how many browns and what's left over. But what we really want you to pay attention to is to really understand inside that when you pick these colors, the amounts that you pick are going to determine what tonal value you're going to get at the end. So let's give you an example. If you look at a 4.3, which is a level 4 gold, if you break that down, you could create that by using a level 4.0 and adding 33 amplifier. Depending on how much warmth you want, you're going to add more of that 33. Okay. Now, you can also add the 33 to an already existing 4.3. One of the conversion charts that I was looking at yesterday had a lot of these colors that were like 4W and 7W, and they weren't the same as their 7 gold, but they weren't the same as their 7 copper either. It was a specific color called 7 warm. When you're trying to make those kinds of colors, the amplifiers are really going to come into play, because I could make that 4 warm by taking that 4.3 and adding some more warmth to it with the 33 gold. Again, you want to take a look at the other color line, and if they explain what the base color of that warm is, this one it happened to be gold, then it gives me the key to be able to to create it. Again, each one is going to be a little bit different. Now let's look at a trickier breakdown here, a level 4.65, right? We can create that by using 4.6 and 4.5 as we learned before, and it's going to give us a level 4 red mahogany. But we could also do it by using a level 4.6 and adding amplifiers and making that mahogany by using different proportions of 33, 22, and 66. Okay. Again, so I've got my yellow, my violet, and my red, and by using that in different proportions, then I'm able to make that mahogany. I can also make my red mahogany more violet by just adding 22 to 4.65. Okay. But what you want to remember, and again, this is a common theme for us in all the classes, is that color formulation is just like cooking. And by varying something just a little bit, you can get a completely different result that is phenomenal, or a completely different result that maybe is not where you wanted it to go. You want to remember we're gonna fly through these because there's more in-depth information on these in the gray coverage class. So if you haven't taken that one, we do have a recording of it. You could take a look at it, or when it comes up again, you could take the live version as well. But you want to remember that neutral is brown, and your primary colors are going to make brown. Your orange, your purple, and your green mixed together is also going to make a neutral brown. And so you're always trying to make a certain level of brown, but you're adding some kind of tone to it. So how do we do that, and how do we make it so that we get the right combination of colors and are able to make the different kinds of formulas that we can make? A lot of you are probably familiar with tincture and instantani. A quick recap would be that tincture is an oxidative dye, just like a permanent color, one that's going to react with the peroxide and is going to oxidate and grow in the hair shaft. An instantani is an acid-based dye that's going to be attracted to the oxidative dye and stick to it kind of like a magnet. So on the left you see a tincture molecule, and on the right you see a tincture molecule covered with the instantani dyes. Instantani is available in 94 shades, so all of the shades of the tincture color except for the amplifiers. By mixing it with the developers, you can double or triple your pigment load. You already learned some of this in the gray coverage class on how to double pigment, and you use it the same way when you're trying to create colors. You don't just have to use it for covering gray, right? And one of the great things about using instantani with your permanent color as opposed to using like a Demi permanent would be that it's a non-progressive formula, so it's not going to get darker over time. Also, it's not going to change the level of your formula. So since we have all the shades available, by using the same color, level, and tone of instantani into your color formula, you're going to be able to just add more pigment for more vibrancy and for longer lasting color, and not actually make the color any darker. So the ways to use instantani, okay, and we'll go through all of these formulations so you can see them, but let's just jump in. So the first way, refreshing the faded ends. Okay, now think about your color knowledge and think about how when you do someone's roots, their new growth, you're going to have color left in the bowl. Now, if you're able to add color instantani in those same shades into that remaining color in the bowl, you're doing a couple of things. uh, you're able to take that, mix it in equal parts in the bowl, and then go ahead and pull it through. Okay, it's going to be a lot gentler and better than using a shampoo cap or a conditioner cap or pulling the color itself straight through. Now, think about this and taking it to the next step. Okay, let's say you have a particular formula that you're using on the new growth, but you need to add more tone to the mid-lengths and ends. You can take what's in that bowl that you just did on the regrowth and add instantani in complementary tones to that and pull that through, and then you're going to be able to refresh those colors. The more instantani you put in, the more you dilute the volume of the formulation and the more pigments that are going in. So if one of you guys can, in the chat window, let me know that you're looking at doubling your pigment, that would be great. And Michael Ann has a great question here. And her question is, what's going to be the difference between using instantani or using amplifiers? Okay. What you want to remember is that your amplifiers are going to give you more tone into a permanent color formula. Okay. And then using instantani is going to give you not only more tone, more of these acidic pigments that will help to dilute down the volume of your developers. As we all know, and one of the things to take away from this is that there's a lot of things that we can do by varying the levels of color that we use. Remember, at the beginning of this presentation, we talked about higher alkalinity and less pigment in the higher levels, right? By taking all this knowledge and putting it together, we're able to make any color that we want. So on top of using higher levels in color, you can use higher or lower levels in developer and still put more pigment in using the instantani. Let me know if that makes sense, Michael Ann. Now, doubling your pigment. Okay, normal formula is going to be on the left-hand side. I want you to think about this. If I'm using 2 ounces of 5.34 tincture and I'm using 2 ounces of 20 volume, that's my normal application formula. Now, what if I was out of 20 volume in the salon and I only had 40 volume? Traditionally, I would take an ounce of 40 volume and an ounce of distilled water, and that would give me 2 ounces of 20 volume. All we're saying is instead of using that distilled water, use instantani to dilute down your developer. So I always tell people to mix the developer with the instantani first, so 1 ounce of 40 volume with 1 ounce of 5.34 instantani. Then take that mixture and mix that with 2 ounces of your tincture color. And now what you've created is a formula that gives you double the amount of pigment both in acid-based dyes and in oxidative dyes. So you're going to get a richer, more vibrant look. Now, if I was using a red shade, right, and I wanted 30 volume, I would use 60 volume. So I would use, let's say, 2 ounces of a 6.6 with tincture with 1 ounce of 60 volume and 1 ounce of 6.6 instantani. Let me know if that all makes sense. Now we're going to move on to tint backs. So taking our bleach blondes back to brown. Okay. hopefully you're seeing that all of this is building on top of each other. And when we get to the end, you'll see how this all works together. Okay. So tint backs. Traditionally, tint backs work where fill someone's hair first. That's one process. And then you come back and you color over in a second process. Okay. With Mastey, we want you to be able to do all of that at one time. So the formula that we have up here would be for anyone from a level 10 or higher trying to get back down to a level 7. You'll notice that we have a blue, a red, and a yellow part of the formula, and then a target shade. And then what you also will see is that if you add up all of the colors, it makes 2 1/4 ounces of color, so we're using 2 1/4 ounces of 10 volume. Now, this is what's important about this formulation. Okay, as you can see, we're using our 7.0 as our blue, using a 1/2 ounce of that. We're using our 7.6 as our red. We're using a 1/4 ounce of that. We're using our 7.3 as our yellow, and we're using a 1/2 ounce of that. And we're using 1 ounce of our target level, in this case, a 7.34. Now, we do recommend the chocolates as the target level when you're tinting back. If you were looking to do a different tone, you would just switch out that target level to the tone that you were looking for. And make sure, though, that you're paying attention to the tonal value that you're trying to get. Okay. One of the things that you can do is you can substitute that 0.6 red to be color instantane instead of tincture. And this would depend, again, it would depend on if you were worried about getting, it would depend on the amount of damage that's on the hair and the amount of fadage that you expect from that client. Using a combination of the tincture and the instantane will give you a more vibrant result than using the combination of just tincture. Using the combination of tincture will help you to fill more, though, if this is a client that you feel is going to fade out a lot faster. Now you'll see that we're trying to get down to a level 4, and the formula is pretty much the same. From level 7 or anything higher, trying to get down to a level 4, we're still going to need our blue, we're still going to need our red, we're still going to need our yellow, and we're still going to need our target shade. Okay. That being said, you can make the same modifications here and use 4.6 in the instantane, depending on what you're trying to do. Longer lasting, deeper coverage, or more vibrancy. If you were trying to get to a level 5, all you would do is use the exact same formula, but switch everything out to a level 5. If you're trying to get to a level 6, use this exact same formula and proportions, just using the level 5 shades, or I'm sorry, the level 6 shades, so 6.0, 6.3, and 6.34. We're always using 10 volume, and we're always using the same amount of color as to developer. Our processing time is really important here as well. As with all the rest of the colors, we want to do 45 minutes of processing to make sure that all of those oxidative dyes are being able to grow and lodge themselves in. So Ginny has a great question. Are we making 2 formulas, so a filler and then just using the target shade, or are we mixing this all in together? And we are mixing all of this in together. So basically what you end up doing is just having one process that's going to go ahead and fill and color the hair and last longer than just using one straight color on the hair. So yes, all together, all at once. A half ounce of 4.0, a quarter ounce of 4.6, a half ounce of 4.3, an ounce of 4.34, and 2 1/4 ounces of 10 volume. Okay. Making demi-permanents. Okay. So we're going to go through how to make these formulas, and think about it while we're going through it. Think through the kinds of colors you would use, what shades you would use, and then when we get to our last portion, we'll put all of this stuff together. Okay. So for a demi-permanent, you want to use 2 ounces of instanton, 1 ounce of 20 volume, and 1 ounce of tincture. You would want to use this kind of formula instead of using a regular off-the-shelf demi-permanent. The benefits to using this are going to be that when you formulate your demi-permanent with tincture and instanton, they're not going to get progressively darker, and you're also going to have access to make demis in up to 94 different shades. Formula is always going to be the same. 2 ounces of your instanton, 1 ounce of your 20 volume, and 1 ounce of your tincture, all mixed together in the bowl, and then you go ahead and pull that through. Now when we're making a semi-permanent, okay, a semi-permanent is going to last less than the demi. What we're trying to do is doing the exact same formula as the demi, except we're modifying the volume of the developer. Okay, so we're using 2 ounces of instanton in the shades that we want, 1 ounce of 10 volume, and 1 ounce of tincture. So by diluting this down, it's giving it a different strength to the final formulation. So a semi-permanent should last you about 6 to 8 shampoos, but it also gives you the ability that with these same 3 products, you have now access to 94 different semi-permanent shades. So not only so you can do permanent, demi-permanent, and semi-permanent, all in up to 100 shades, without having to stock all these different brands or all these different types of products. Now the next thing that you can do by mixing these 3 products together and varying their percentages and the types of volume of peroxide is making toners. Now we have different kinds of toners and different ways of using toners. We already talked a little bit about what we call pre-toning, which is using amplifiers in your formula to either tone out unwanted warmth in your lift or accentuating vibrancy in when you're lifting into your reds and your coppers and things. Now the next level of toning that you can do is you can use the Mastey color shampoos to give more vibrancy or more tone in the bowl after you're done coloring. Mastey color shampoos are also a nice solution for your take-home clients as well, especially those that maybe have bad water, well water, like to swim a lot. Those clients that you know that their color is going to fade a little bit more because of the harshness of how they treat it. The Mastey color shampoos are something that you can retail to them, have them take home with them, and they can use it once or twice a week to refresh that color in between your visits. You can also use instanton as a toner by itself in the bowl. It's going to give you a little bit more long-lasting than the Mastey color shampoo, but again, it's not a more permanent or demi-permanent solution. It's more of a solution to add more tone into the color. And then you can also create your toner formulas. Now, when we look at our toner formulas, again, it's really simple. we're using 2 ounces of instantani, an ounce of 10 volume, and an ounce of tincture, and it's going to last you about 6 to 8 shampoos. If you want something stronger, then you can bump up the 20 volume instead of 10, and that's going to give you more of a demi-permanent, because then you're making a demi-permanent toner. Okay. And then the last formulations that we'll touch on are going to be glosses and glazes. These always confuse me for a long time, and they're used interchangeably by a lot of manufacturers. But the technical definition of these terms are real specific. Okay, a gloss is basically a clear shine, and a glaze is a clear shine with tint or tone added to it. And there's a lot of you use these after color for a lot of different things. I mean, you can use it as a toner, but you could also use it to give a more harmonious look, and we'll see that in a couple of the examples that we'll have in a little bit over hair that has a lot of different processes in it. And now here is the exciting part. Okay, so for all of you guys that are on the call today, we're going to go ahead. If you could do me a favor and email me your shipping information to color, COLOR, at mastey.com. We're going to go ahead and send you a free bottle of our new color gloss. And this product really came about by stylist demand. We didn't have a color gloss in the tincture line, and it's something that a lot of salons do. They like to do the gloss service after different kinds of colors. So we went ahead and we created a new amplifier. It's a clear amplifier, and that clear amplifier you can use in a couple of different combinations, and we'll talk about it here in a second as a clear gloss. So for glossing, so for just giving it a clear, you want to apply it to the hair after you've rinsed out the color and shampooed the hair. Okay, and then you're going to go ahead and let it process for about 10 minutes, and then you can rinse it out, and that's going to give you extra shine. So it's like a color shine treatment after the color. Now, if you'd like to create a glaze, what you would use is, in equal amounts, you'd use your clear gloss, so 1 ounce of your clear gloss, and 1 ounce of the desired tone that you'd like in color instantani. So, for example, you'd use the clear gloss, the number for it is going to be CG, and you add 1 ounce of the 5.73 instantani, which is the toasted hazelnut, and you would have a toasted hazelnut glaze. And you would process this in the same way that you would the gloss that we just talked about. So you're going to apply it after you shampoo the color out. You're going to leave it in the hair and for about 10 minutes, and then you're going to rinse it out. And that's correct, no developer. So you're not going to need any kind of developer or anything in there. It's just going to be the clear gloss and then whatever shade of color instantani that you'd like. Any questions? Go ahead and type any questions into the chat box. One of the things that I did want to mention, and there isn't a slide for it, but what we're really, really focused on here at Mastey is making tools that the colorist can use in order to create whatever vision they see. And so we have tincture, which is our permanent color, color instantane, which is, for lack of a better term, our color additive, and our developers. With those, you're now able to make 100 different shades of color, 100 different demi-permanents, 100 different semi-permanents, 100 different toners, 100 different glazes, glosses, or a clear glaze. And so you're able to, and you're also able to do high lift, so highlights. So what we're able to do is provide you with 3 products that can take your repertoire of services up to a different level. Ginny has a great question. So the instanton molecules. Okay, remember, we just colored the hair. So we're doing this color gloss on top of the hair that has just been colored. So that hair that has just been colored has permanent color on it. So the instanton molecules in the clear will give it this glaze look. If we wanted to get a more profound, like toner situation going, where we needed to maybe open that cuticle up a little to get the instanton molecules to stick a little differently, then it would be a different formulation that we would do in the bowl during the service or what have you. But for the purposes of just using a glaze, right, or a colored gloss, the instanton in combination with the tincture gloss just together will give you the ability to do that. So no developer or anything like that. So let's put it all together. We're coming down to the end here. If you guys have questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat window. Let's put all of this together, all the different things that we talked about. And when I leave you guys today, we'll have some interesting assignments to be able to do. But keep this in mind, okay? On the screen we have Katy Perry, right? And Katy Perry has had her hair all these different colors. One of the colors that was really great was this black with either a violet or the black with the blue tone to it. Now, in order to create that look, right, it's a very simple formula. You're looking at using 1.07, which is our darkest shade, and adding 07 or adding 22, depending on whether you would like to have blue or violet. Now, the more 07 or the more 22 that you add to that formula, more of that vibrancy that you'll see in the sunlight. Okay? Remember, these are tones that you'll see in the sunlight. So you're not going to make their hair purple or make their hair blue. It's going to be black with a cast of that blue or that violet. Okay? Now, let's look at Duchess Kate, the Duchess of Cambridge, right? And I'll give you a little insight of what we're doing, and we're taking these iconic people and their hair and giving you our interpretation of how you could do this using the tincture color. If you follow us on Facebook or on Pinterest, you'll see that there are different stylists that put up these different formulas of either clients that they're doing or formulas that they feel would create the desired result of the particular model that's on the screen. So for the Duchess of Cambridge, you're looking at dark hair with glimmering or golden highlights. Now, formulas for this, the technique's pretty simple. You have 11.2 with our 07 and or 11.2 with our 37, both with 60 volume. Okay, remember you want to keep equal parts. So if you have 2 ounces of 11.2 and a quarter ounce of 07, you want to have 2 1/4 ounces of 60 volume. Okay. Now, she's about a natural level 5 or 6, so that's why we're putting in the 37 or the 07 in there, because we're looking to counteract warmth. Okay. We can vary the timing on these foils that we'll put in for different levels of lift. We can even vary the developer volume to get different levels of lift. So when you look at her hair, you can see that there are a lot of different levels of highlights going on there. And it's real simple to achieve that by just varying the developer or the timing that you're using. The end result is we want to lift her hair, her highlights into a soft gold. We don't want to lift anything at the base. So as you can tell, we're not lifting in the root area, and we do that because we still want some dimension, and we don't want any hot roots. And then we're looking again to take dark hair into these golden highlights. Let's look at our next model here, Anne Hathaway, creating a root beer color. Okay. Now, you'll notice this formula is particularly interesting because we're using a 6 gold and then a level 4 red mahogany. Now, what you want to remember from the beginning of this class is that as you get higher in a level, you're going to have less pigment. So if you have less pigment, you're going to have less tone. So in this formula, we're using the 6.3 because we want gold tone, but not as much gold tone as we want our 0.65. So when you put this together, our target level is going to be about a level 5, right? But we're going to have a stronger red mahogany tone than gold, but there'll be enough gold in there to counteract what needs to happen so that we make this nice root beer colored shade. Remember, tones in the level 4 are stronger than the tones in the level 6. And what you're looking for is more root beer than neutral. Our next model is Emma Stone. Okay? And we're doing 2 different processes on Emma. In order to get this look, our interpretation was using a 6.64, 6.3. We're looking for like a burnt amber look. We're using 20 volume with this, and we're applying it all over in full processing time. Okay? The proportions of the 6.64 to 6.3 is really going to depend on our own eye and how we interpret that color. You want to remember that, as we learned at the beginning, there is no right perfect formula. What you're trying to do is interpret your vision. And so I might use a little more 6.4 in this than 6.3, but that doesn't mean that you couldn't use equal parts. It really depends on what you're trying to get to. So again, 6.64 and 6.3 with 20 volume. We're going to let that process fully out, and then we're going to mix a glazing formula, which again is 1 ounce of the clear gloss with 1 ounce of the 7.43. And we're going to apply that at the end of our color process after we've washed out the color. Leave it in there for 10 minutes to give it this vibrancy. This 7.43 glazing formula is also a formula that you can use in between color services if your client needs, a bit of a color shine or more vibrancy in between the 6 weeks or the 4 weeks that they come and see you. If there are any questions, go ahead and type them into the chat window. Thank you. Next, we have Jennifer Aniston. We've got 3 different formulas that we're using in 3 different ways. We've got a 7.1 with a 20 volume, Formula 1. We have a 6.223 with 10 volume, Formula 2. And then we have our 11.2 with our 60 volume. Again, you can modify that by depending on how warm you think your client's going to be when you're doing your highlights, you can add the 07 or the 37. So we want to apply our Formula 1 to the new growth. That's going to be the 7.1 and the 20 volume. We're going to apply that to the new growth. We're going to let that process out for 45 minutes. We're going to shampoo and condition. Then we're going to take our Formula 3, which is our highlighting formula, and we're going to use a zigzag highlighting technique on her. And then we're going to go in and we're going to foil random strands with our Formula 2, our low lighting formula, in order to give it depth and dimension. Okay. And as you guys can see, I'm going to back up just a little bit so that you'll notice. These formulas have been getting increasingly a little more difficult. From Katy Perry using a shade and an amplifier to highlights, to creating a color, to creating a color and using a glaze, to doing highlights, lowlights, and in all of the color, to our last model, Jennifer Lopez, who has a lot of different things going on in this picture. Jennifer, to accomplish this look, her stylist was looking at 5 different formulas, doing a bunch of different techniques in order to get the tone, the color, and the dimension that she has. Our first formula is an 8.1 with a 37 green amplifier and 30 volume. Formula 2 is 11.2 with 07 and 60 volume. Formula 3 is 7.4 with 9.3 and 20 volume. Formula 4 is 7.9 and 10 volume. And then we're making a glaze with our 11.2 and our 10.2. And you want to remember that Jennifer's probably like a natural level 5, so you're going to get a lot of warmth when you're lifting. So that's why you'll notice that we're using an 8.1, which is an ash, and then we're still adding some 37 green amplifier to counteract that lift. And then we're using 30 volume to get higher. So we're using that first formula, Formula 1, to adjust the base and give her that dimension that she has. We're using Formula 2 as a highlight retouch, Formula 4 as a low light. Right? And the way we would do this, we'd apply the Formula 1 to the new growth, process that for about 10 to 15 minutes. And we're lifting and trying to tone out a little bit of that warmth. So you may have to lift it for a little bit longer. Depends on your client and how easy they lift, right? But we're not trying to we're not trying to get them to a level 8. We're just trying to break that base up a little bit to be a little lighter. We're going to go ahead and shampoo and towel dry that after it's done processing. And then starting at the nape, we're going to be using a diagonal foil placement with 2 weave sections. and applying Formula 2 from the scalp away from the scalp to retouch the highlights. So we want that grown-in look, so we don't want those highlights right on the scalp. We'll foil that in, and then we'll leave a section of existing color in between, so a section that has nothing in it. And then we'll leave another section and apply Formula 4 to add lowlights to that existing highlight. And we can continue alternating these formulas to give it that dimension. When you look at her hair, there is a lot of dimension in that hair because the stylist took the time to go ahead and foil these different formulas in. So you continue alternating these formulas to the occipital, and then above the occipital, you use a diagonal placement as well. Weave sections and apply Formula 2 away from the scalp again. Remember, you want that grown-in look. Leave a section of the existing highlights, and then intermittently, you can use Formula 3 to give in between the sections of the existing highlights to give it a little bit more dimension. You're going to process until the highlights are a light blonde, and then you're going to rinse, shampoo, and towel dry. Then after that, you can apply Formula 5, which is that glaze. It's kind of like a platinum glaze over the hair. You apply it in the bowl after you've shampooed and towel dried. Leave it on for about 10 minutes, and then that's going to give it this nice harmonious color balanced look at the end. So I hope we were able to see the progression. Some of these are a lot of work and very extreme, but there's a lot that you can do in between as well. But it's just really knowing the tools and knowing your colors and how you can use those together that gives you the ability to create all of these looks. And on to our test/homework site of the slide here in the last 6 minutes. So we're running on time too, so I'm excited about that. In order to move on to the next modular, what we're looking for you guys to do is to pick 10 of your existing clients that maybe you are still transitioning over from another line or what have you. Or if you've transitioned all of your customers already, you can give us those formulas as well. So pick 10 clients and then convert their formulas over to a tincture formula. Okay? When you do that, take those 10 formulas and think about how you can enhance those formulas using the techniques that we talked about today. So either adding some tone to it, how would you do that, why would you do that, a glazing formula for it, how to turn that formula into a double pigment, something that shows that you understand the process of taking a formula from something very basic and very simple to something more customized and that really represents the work that you can accomplish. Okay. Again, those are 10 existing customers. That one shouldn't take that long. We are available for questions as well. You can email color@mastey.com if you have questions about that. Then this one's actually the hard one. Okay. We want you to pick 10 celebrity photos. You can grab them off of Google Images or what have you, magazine, wherever. Tell us how you would achieve that look. Okay. So how would you do that? The excitement of this assignment is to get you in touch with all the things that you can actually create, right? So don't pick things that are super easy, like single process colors or anything like that. Take a look at what's out there and what you can create with these formulas and the techniques that you've learned in your training. For these formulas, let's step out on most of them. Let's step outside of the box and think they have no gray at all, no gray hair at all. So you're just trying to create the look that you see on someone that has, let's say, a base level 5 or 4 or 5 or 6, whatever you decide. But don't worry about gray coverage. If you want to take that step and you feel a little challenged, take a couple and throw that gray scenario into the mix. If you've taken the gray coverage class already, then you know that there's a lot of information from there that correlates with what we learned here today. So again, you have your 10 formulas that you want to convert over, and then how you enhance those, and then your 10 celebrity formulas. And then just a hint at part of the final, right? Could you create makeovers for 10 of your clients? And I'm not asking you to do this right now, but just think about that in the future as you're doing your 2 assignments. Think about how could I modify these formulas to give my clients, a new, exciting, wonderful, really portfolio piece of what I've learned and what I can do as a stylist. So you start thinking about that now, and because that'll come up later on in this process. But again, so 10 formula conversions, enhancing those formulas, and then your 10 celebrity formula, 10 celebrity formula interpretations. And for these also, we'd love the opportunity to, when you guys hand those in, we'd love the opportunity to spotlight those on our Facebook page as well as our website, and then with links to you and your site and your Facebook page, so that people can see how you guys are thinking about color and the great things that you guys can do out there. So with that, I'll leave it open to final questions. If there's any questions, please go ahead and put it in the chat. And then thank you again for joining us today. And I'll be in contact with all of you as well to get your feedback on today's class. Yes. So the best way to do this would probably be through email. So I'll go ahead and I'll send you an email with exactly the procedures. But if you want to do it straight in your email client is fine. If you want to do it in Microsoft Word and attach it, that's fine as well. Whatever is going to be easiest for you. I will send a link to a recording of this seminar, as well as a link to a PDF of all the slides so that you can take a look at it and go over it at your leisure. Carol, you didn't get the link to the first one. Let me try and pull it up, and if not, I will send it along. You know what I'll do is I'll send along a link to the gray coverage class video and PDF along with this one as well. Thank you. Thank you guys very much for being with us here today. I'm excited we actually finished on time, so that's pretty good. If there's any last-minute questions, I'll leave the I'll leave the room open, and I'm here to answer any questions. But for those of you guys that have to get to your clients, thank you again for being with us, and I look forward to getting your assignments and moving on to the next pod. Thanks. Carol, for the gray coverage, there was actually a quiz. It's an 85-question quiz that's online, and you'll get a link to that as well in this, so that after you watch the remainder of the gray coverage video that you might have missed, you're able to take that quiz as well.